after rescaping the 2,000-gallon aquarium and giving it that awesome Aqua Decor 3D background, you know, with the logs and the root effect, I knew that one day I'd want to be able to add plants to it. But we have a bit of a problem. Okay, first and foremost, obviously, it's a 2,000-gallon aquarium. Not exactly that easy to plant in the first place. Imagine all the planted aquarium substrate we would need to fill this in to make it suitable for plant life. I guess we should also mention that there are 5 freshwater stingrays in this aquarium, which pose a pretty big problem. They're not going to let me plant this aquarium. These are such a curious and powerful animal that all they're going to do is dig any plants up that I add or rip them apart. So we've got to get really creative with what we're doing. We also have 4 Asian arowanas within the aquarium. These guys don't pose as much of a problem, but they will tear at the plants here and there. So we have to try to figure something out here. First, obviously, we have to come to a compromise and figure out which plants we can actually keep. One plant that comes to mind immediately are floating plants. Wouldn't it be ideal to almost have an entire surface of floating plants within this aquarium? Although we do have a relatively high surface area and lots of surface agitation, it would take a tremendous amount of plants. We could always put in some more robust plants that could withstand the arowanas jumping and of course reproduce rather quickly. So an awesome plant I seen at the pet store, and it's the season for them, was the water hyacinth, or however you're going to go ahead and pronounce that. This is a pretty cool plant. It's a floating plant, and it will actually flower eventually, perhaps, depending on conditions in the aquarium, but it also has these massive long roots. Usually every 2 weeks it will double in size, which is fantastic. Plus it's a pretty tough and robust plant. However, it's highly invasive, just not here in Canada. It wouldn't be able to withstand our temperatures in the winter. So if you ever do come across these plants and you live in warmer temperatures, never ever throw these plants away without destroying them completely first, like flushing them down your drain or throwing them in a pond or thinking you're doing a good thing. These can completely overtake a water surface and destroy an ecosystem extremely quickly. But that goes without saying that that's something that happens when you introduce a non-native species of almost anything into a habitat it's not used to. I got about 16 of these, so I'm thinking in 2 weeks we'd have 32 of them. 2 weeks from there, we'd have 64. 2 weeks from there, we'd have, what, 128? And so forth and so forth. Before long, this is covering the entire aquarium. I don't want to add it to the aquarium yet because I haven't treated yet. We're going to cover that in a moment. So the floating plants is no problem. Treat them, toss them in the tank, and we're basically done. Over time, hopefully we get this nice carpet of these plants up top with these really long roots that can really grow to like a foot or 2 in length, which would look pretty awesome. I think the Asian arowanas would like them as well and find more security in them. I'm really interested to see where they go in the tank, where they blow around, because there is a tremendous amount of flow in this tank. So we'll see what happens. Of course, the floating plant idea is pretty easy. It's a gimme. But what about any other plant that I can actually grow in the substrate or grow in this tank? And one of the plants that I thought would do well in here is the Vallis, or Vallisneria. I went with Vallisneria americana. I'm going with this one instead of Gigantea because Gigantea is going to get way too long. Those things grow 4, 5, perhaps even 6 feet in length. They're going to come up to the top of the tank and drape over, which is an amazing effect, but not one I'm looking for because I have my floating plants. I only want this to come up maybe 2 to 3 feet, 2.5 feet, something like that, and then have the floating plants take over the top portion of the aquarium. But this is a nutrient-loving plant that gets its nutrients from its root structure. We only have pool filtration sand type substrate in here with no nutrients in there. But I can't really add in planted tank substrate even within the root systems because the rays are just literally going to turn this aquarium into a mucky mess within a day. So here's what I come up with. We're gonna get a little creative with this, and this actually comes from my years in the discus hobby. For a lot of discus hobbyists that really want to have plants in their aquariums but also want to do the bare bottom thing, we put them in flower pots. Just like that. We could put this in a bare aquarium and they're gonna grow wonderfully. The only thing you need to put in here is some planted tank substrate. Number of things you can use, but I've got some freshwater stingrays. Like I said, they're gonna make a mess of any soils or any sort. So I went with some Eco Complete planted aquarium substrate, mostly because it's like a gravelly look to it, very heavy and dense. We'll have a closer look at this in a moment. I only also got a couple bags of it, which is a benefit. I don't need to buy 400 pounds. I only need to buy enough to fill up whatever types and sizes of flower pots I plan on using. Now I got 40 of these plants and we can't just toss them directly into the aquarium. We need to treat all the plants first. But there's a multitude of ways you can prepare your plants for your aquarium. And to prepare the plants, we'll be using potassium permangranate. Now you can find this in your hardware stores, typically in the plumbing supplies section, or where you'll find water softeners. Now this stuff will tend to be a little more expensive than your bleach method, which we'll talk about in a moment, but the way this works is actually pretty simple. We don't need a whole lot of this. Just add enough, a little bit at a time, until the water kind of turns like a really dark pinkish purplish look, but you can still kind of see through it. There's no real measurement. It's all going to come down to how big your container is, how much water there is, versus how much potassium permanganate that you're going to need. Once we've got it ready, we can go ahead and add in the plants. Now arguably this is even too much potassium permanganate, but I'm going to be doing the most of the mix in a large bucket, so I'll be able to control that a little easier. Now the why this is works is potassium permangranate is a strong oxidizer. It's literally going to oxidize all the organic materials on the outside of the plant, including algae, so that we can kind of start off with a fresh plant. We let it sit in here for 3 to 5 minutes, and then of course rinse this off really well in clean water. Using the bleach method is going to be a lot more obtainable for you guys, simply because you probably already have some bleach in your household, and potassium permangranate isn't exactly that easy to come by. Usually be in your hardware store, in the plumbing supplies, or wherever the water softeners are. You'll find it there. It tends to be more expensive, but it is safer and a lot more forgiving on your plants, for especially the delicate ones. So all plants are now prepared. Like I said, we had 40, but really what the numbers are is that we had 40 pots, which each had 3 stems type of deal, or 3 runners per. So we've got 120 of those. Not all of them are in perfect condition, but we'll see what we can do. The thing with these clay pots is they all have holes in the bottom. So we're going to take a little piece of mesh that we have here that we're cutting out, just some plastic mesh. We'll drop it right into the bottom there. And that means roots can still grow through it if they need to, but the substrate cannot. I'm just going to dump this whole bag of substrate in this bucket here so it's easier to get at. As you can see though, this is more like a gravel. Nice and heavy. The rays are going to have a difficult time making a mess out of this. So let's take a couple handfuls and dump it in. Just like that. We got a little bit of water dripping out. That looks good. So what we'll do next here is take probably several of these. I'm going to have to push them down further than you typically would because the rays will have a field day ripping these out. I have a feeling when I wake up tomorrow morning we're going to be in for quite a mess, but hopefully they don't do too much damage in the meantime. I want to add probably 8 to 10 individual plants to each pot, especially these smaller ones, to have the highest chance of these being successful. I really only need one to take hold and then kind of spread throughout the pot itself when you think about it. I don't need all of these to stay in here. Already feels like some of them are going to want to come out. So there we have it. We're going to be able to plant the 2,000 gallon aquarium without switching the entire substrate over, which, I mean, a lot of people say, why don't you just do that? One, it'd be entirely expensive. Two, it'd be a bigger waste of money. The rays are going to destroy it absolutely, completely. This type of substrate is ideal for them. They're going to have a much more difficult time ripping it all out. Plus, it's quite heavy. They're not going to be able to knock it over or move it. We're essentially having the ability to add live plants to the aquarium without really switching the tank over or doing a whole lot else to it. Now we just need to repeat this step a few times. This stuff says it doesn't need to be rinsed. Rinse it, it's an absolute mess. I hate when they say that. Doesn't need to be rinsed. Oh yes it does. I'm gonna use a few different sizes of pots here, just so I can have some options as to where we're gonna put them. And these are just gonna be put in between the roots and whatnot, especially where the rays were kind of trying to get out at one point. That's a good idea to stuff those with plants. Now this isn't necessarily the most natural look, but you could paint this a different color. You could coat it in a silicone and then cover it with some of your substrate. You could buy these in different colors, etc. I've done this in discus tanks years ago, and it's more of an acquired look and taste. However, once it's in this tank and we get it in between the roots, it's not going to be noticeable, especially from the viewing angles that we look at it from. Now again, I'm definitely overplanting these and pushing them to the plants too far into the substrate, but I don't really have a high chance of success here. If this doesn't work, my next option is to go with Nubius and other plants that could just, you know, tie on to the roots, but I don't really want to do that. I want to try this. Now, are all these little pots big enough to grow out all of these plants? And the simple answer to that is no. But what they are going to serve a purpose is to get these established and going. They'll send out runners. They'll probably come outside of the pots. There's holes beneath it so the roots can expand down into the sand substrate. This isn't anything new though. This has been done in the hobby for many, many years. It's just not a hugely popular option. I guess it's probably because of the amount of awareness around it is such a niche thing that not many people do it. But it's a very cheap and effective way to add some really cool plants to your aquarium using a very minimal amount of planted tank substrate. Now you can use soil if you wanted to, like gardening soil, but and some clay pots. These are like 50 cents, 99 cents a piece. And then add in some of your root demanding or plants that take up their nutrients through their roots into pots like this. I hate having to push them down so far, as some of these aren't already doing that well, but I've been keeping rays for years. I know what they're capable of. I know there's going to be all kinds of planted tank people in the comments going to be telling me how wrong this is from a planted tank perspective. Yep. But you probably don't have stingrays or have that type of experience, so it's just a little different. That was a cute little plot. I think we're going to stick to a lot of the smaller sizes. Maybe we'll do one more small pot and then 3 more of these. I don't have a lot of plants. I don't know how spread out this is going to be. I do have an idea of where I want everything to go though, so we're just going to have to wait to see what happens. Downside is I have to get in this tank again and drain it most of the way down to knee level type of thing, so I can set these down in place without submerging my head, so I can get a good proper job done. Using tweezers allows you to more efficiently plant these types of plants as well. You can get them pretty cheap on Amazon. A lot of people will recommend you getting stainless steel like these ones. They'll last longer. But almost any steel will last quite a while as long as you dry it off completely and take care of them. But for around $5 or $10, it's an invaluable tool when planting anything. If I had to do this by my fingers and that sort of thing, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. See, some of these have already melted and whatnot, so during shipment, so it'll be tough to get them to take hold, but can only hope. Rays are such a curious creature though, they're going to go right after them. How much we got there? Wow, these aren't going very far. Let's move on to the bigger sizes. I don't need a lot of that mesh, just a little bit. I actually only needed 1 bag of this substrate as well. Slim pickings left in this with these Vallis. Not a lot of nice ones left. I'll do my best here. Now ideally you wouldn't push Vallis down this far, and you wouldn't group them this far together or this close together. The way these guys propagate themselves is they shoot off runners eventually, which will send off a root under the substrate. It'll eventually come up as a brand new plant, so you do want to give them space. You also don't want to push them down as far as I'm pushing them, but again, I got some fish that are going to try to pull them up, probably immediately. And I don't think all of them are going to survive anyways, so the more the better. I got some good lights on there, and the substrate here is going to give them their nutrients that they need. So ideally it should be okay. I don't know. Well, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot left. Let me get these organized. One more. You know, I'll be able to push these down into the substrate a little bit as well, build up the gravel around them, so they'll blend in a little bit more. I guess we'll just have to wait to see what this turns out to look like. Maybe room for just one more. See how bad this is getting? Hopefully they'll bounce back. I don't know if this last one's gonna look good or not. There's really not a lot of plant left here. You could always hide it in there somewheres, and maybe within a few weeks it really bounces back and starts to grow. This is depressing though. At least they use the best plants on the smaller ones, but Vallis is an easy to grow plant. It shouldn't be a problem. There we have it. So that's it. We've got, what, 1, 2, 3 really small ones, 3 medium-sized, and 1 large out of, what do we have for 120 stems. Not bad. We only use 1 bag of substrate as well. So in total, I'm into this for less than $100, which I think is affordable enough to try it out and see if it's going to work in this aquarium. If it does, we could always add in a few more pots here and there. Next step, which of course is to start draining the aquarium. While we're doing so, we can start to get a better look at the root structure and where we might want to place some of these pots. Let's have a look. So if you guys remember, right here, I had to add this extra log in place there. As you can see, that's where one of the rays got underneath the roots and behind the background a little while ago. However, I'm going to be replacing that with a pot. That should do the trick. You see the rays all swimming around. We got the baby pearl over here, 3 black diamonds, another ray. The arowana are over here right now. I think they're a little upset at their water level dropping. So I think for the most part, the pots are going to occupy these back spaces, like one right there. So one here, maybe here, 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 over there. Mostly in the back region of the aquarium. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts though, so let me know in the comment section below what you would have done or how you would have did this. But it is getting late in the day, and I know you guys are going to want to see today's video, so I'm going to end it here. It's still going to be about another hour before I can actually get in the aquarium, plant the plants or the pots, fill the tank back up, which will take most of the day, then some clarity issues, and in the next video we'll see all of that, be getting in the tank and whatnot. So if you're not subscribed to this channel yet and that's something you want to see me do, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. That video will be out in a couple of days.